All right, let's do. Let's gather ourselves for a few minutes. All right. So just settle in. Just take a moment and do a check from the top of your head down through your body, down through your body and down to your feet. Just starting at the top and noticing what is there. Is it tense? Is it loose? Just peeling down through your shoulders. Maybe even letting your shoulders drop a bit. Through your torso. Into your legs. Noticing your calves, your shins, all the way to your feet, and out to the tip of your toes. Take a few passes like that. Just a wave rolling from the top of your head out through your feet. Each time it passes, you just get a little more relaxed. On this last little wave that we're going to do, imagine a golden light just pouring down onto your head, filling up your body, coating it from the top all the way down. Let's just come back, do some stuff. Oh, okay, some folks blacked out from that, sorry. Yeah, fair enough. So did everybody get the email that I sent out last week with that our assignment for this unit? And if not, those worksheets are posted in World Class in the content area. And I would like to collect those from you at the start of class on Wednesday. Does anybody have any questions about those? I would like you to figure out the answers on your own. Think of it as kind of a test. But they're all really simple questions, hopefully. And some of it's like matching, right? Like, so it's set up to minimize your effort and stress, but to maybe just get you to think about all the things we talked about with voting at once. Is this all good with everybody? No questions? No? Okay, cool. I do have office hours tomorrow if you do have any difficulties. As I would happily help you. I won't answer the questions for you, but I'm happy to help you. And then, let's see, we also have an assignment of electronic homework up. How's that going? Does this seem okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, no questions or anything at this point on that? That'll totally answer questions on. When's that due? Is that Wednesday? It's due tomorrow. Awesome. Okay, cool.
We know what time it closes.
It should be 11:59 p.m.
Okay.
And if it's not, I will make it so. It looked like everybody had good progress on that. Some folks are totally done with it, so, cool. Alrighty, we are moving on to a new unit. We're gonna talk about voting, but a very particular type of voting. And things are gonna get a little bit more mathematical, not, no heavy math. If you can handle fractions, you're good. And I don't mean like adding fractions, just like understanding what a fraction is, that's it. So nothing deeper than that. But I have a question for you. So in the United States, you know, we have a voting system. Let's think about a presidential election. Do we violate any of the fairness criterion with our federal election system? So just take a minute. Think about how our elections work. Electoral College, right? Each state has a number of electors. Do we violate any of the fairness criteria? And like, we're not gonna get into board account shit and stuff. Don't think on the surface level. Any ideas? What are the fairness criteria? What's like the first one that comes to mind? Majority. Is our president always elected by a majority? No. It's like a bone of contention, right? With lots of people. That's why people want to get away from the Electoral College. Some people. People who just lost an election because of the Electoral College want to get rid of it. People who just won by it want to keep it. And then it can change depending. Sometimes Republicans want it, sometimes Democrats want it. It just kind of depends. But it's a pretty complicated system. And it's got a lot of weird intricacies and strange things. For example, let me grab my pens. I got my own pen supply. So for example, got a few things written down here, hold on. So like California. So first off, let's just talk about the Electoral College. And each state has a certain number of electors. So X electors. And this, does anybody know, I'm curious, do you know how the number of electors is determined? Like how many electoral votes each state gets? Do you know where that comes from? Yes. It's close. But there's like a more direct route. So population determines the number of representatives, and then that in turn is your number of electoral votes. So each state has X electors, and it does depend on population, absolutely, but it equals the number of senators plus the number of representatives. Which is kind of interesting, but that totally comes back to population because the numbers of those are there. So, you know, that answer is not incorrect, but the exact number is this total right here. And there's a wide range. So we've got from the biggest, who do you think has the most? California. Yeah, that's it. California has 55 electoral votes. And then anybody know what the minimum is? Yeah, was that a yeah for California?
Said damn.
What's that?
Said damn.
Damn. What's the minimum number any state has? Yes. 4. Ooh, that's close. One less, 3. That's damn good, but that's damn good, yes. So states like Alaska, you know, the wilderness states, Montana, North Dakota, they all have 3 votes. And then and DC, District of Columbia, has 3 as well. District of Columbia is a very tiny place, but they have 3 electoral votes. And then there's shades in between here for everybody else. But between 3 to 55 is the number of electoral votes you can have. And we have seen this cause big, big problems. You may not remember the election of 2000. Were you alive then?
No.
No, so you probably don't. But it all came down to Florida. It was Bush versus Gore. And it came down to Florida's vote. And whichever way Florida went, that was the way the election was going to go. It was literally tied up except for those votes. And it turned out that there was these ballots in a county in southern Florida that have you ever heard of the dangling chads? Yeah?
Oh, dangling what?
Dangling chads. Yeah, that's not like a
Chad from
stripper.
SNL.
That is actually, so dangling chads are these little, they punched out the holes, they had little hole punches. And some of the hole punches weren't completely clean. So they were just kind of hanging off there. And it was a big fiasco. The Supreme Court ended up having to step in and say whether or not those ballots would be counted. And the election ended up going to George Bush. But in the end, Al Gore had actually had a majority of votes. But since he got those electoral votes from Florida, which I don't quite know how many they have, he won the election. So what we're going to talk about for the next few days is this kind of system. This is called weighted voting. And it works like this. The basic setup is I've got different players. So we have players. And in this scenario over here, the players are the states. And you can just think of the players as the vote casters. And we don't know how many we have, but we denote them as player 1, player 2, on up to player sub n. And n is the number of players. So n equals the number of players. Each of those players has a certain power in the system. So we've got this whole system. Some of the players are more powerful than others. Some are less powerful than others. So depending on how many votes you have, you get a sense of your power. It might be misleading, and that's the thing we're going to actually understand a lot better. So each player has a weight, has a weighted vote. And the weights are going to go like this. We'll just call them weight 1, weight 2, out to weight sub n. So, and what this means here, for example, player 1, you can think of it like this. Player 1 has W1 votes. You could even think of it like that. You don't have to think of it as you can think of it as weights or number of votes. Either way is totally going to get you to the same place. And then the system has a quota. And then finally, so there's 3 parts here. There's players, weights, and a quota. And the quota is the threshold to win the election or the vote or whatever we got going on. Finally, we have a quota, Q. And the quota is equal to the minimum number of votes needed to win a vote. This is a real simple setup, but lots of intricacies and different things can happen as we go through here. Now I'm getting worked up. All right, so let's take a look at some examples, my friend. Okay, let's say there's like a law firm. So we've got a law firm, or some kind of firm, a business firm, and there are, let's see, 4 partners, an example. Business firm with 4 partners. And we'll just, P1, P2, P3, P4, not terribly creative, not even going to pretend to make up dumb names for them. That's their names for us. And each person gets a certain number of shares in the company. So when they create this company, they issue 20 shares. So original issue of 20 shares of stock at 10,000 a share. So they invest originally $200,000 into this business. They've got this money, and the partners can then buy certain parts of the stock, right? So everybody, I want 3 shares, I want 10 shares. And the number of shares you get equals the number of votes you have on any initiative. So number of shares equals number of votes when we have to get busy and decide what color we're going to paint the firm. Much more important things than that. They also set the quota as follows. Let's take a look here. So our system is written in the form, put a little bracket, Q, you write your quota, and then here we list our weights. So these are the weights of each of the players. I can just look at this and see how many voters there are. There's 4 voters, and then this is my quota. So for us, I think, let's see, what did I put here? 14 colon 8, 7, 3, 2. Check that out. This is how the stock was split up. Somebody put in 80K, somebody put in 70K, 30K, and 20K, and got these respective voting privileges. So this is about 2/3 here, I think. Let's see. What is 14? So 14 out of 20, what is that? That's 7, 10. That's like 60, 70%. So in other words, we need at least 14 votes to pass something. You can have 14. If you get exactly 14, you're good to go. There's lots of ways that this could go down. Let's think about how these people could vote to pass something. And what we're going to look at are what are called coalitions. So a coalition, that's IOM there, is a group of voters working together. A winning coalition is any group of voters working together whose total votes exceed to make the quota or more. Let me write that out, that wasn't well said. A winning coalition is any coalition with greater than or equal to the quota total votes. Just get some basic terms out here. So coalition is one, the voting system setup, quota, coalition, and winning coalition. So here are some winning coalitions for this setup. And watch how I'm going to write these. Even though this is P1, P2, P3, and P4, we don't write that when we write the coalitions out. We actually just write their vote totals out. So here's one. This is player 1 and 2. They formed together to form a coalition. They got 15 votes together. They could pass anything if they just vote for it. So let me stop me if any of this doesn't make sense. That's a winning coalition. What about, let's see here. Who's important to have in a winning coalition here? Let's kind of leap ahead and let's ask a more interesting question. Could players 2, 3, and 4 do something on their own? You're saying no, Paul, how come? I agree.
Because it has to be more than 14, right?
Exactly, so check this out. Interesting power structure here. Even though there's 3 people here, they can't pass anything on their own. You've got to have player 1 in any coalition that's going to win. player one is called a critical player, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So what are some other coalitions here? Let's see. We've got to have player one. Could we have player one and player 3 and 4? Or does that form a winning coalition? Yeah, so we got, because I think we only got 13 there. So player 1, 3, and 4, that only gives us 13 votes. We got to get this or more. So that wouldn't be, it looks like we probably need everybody. And I don't know that there's any other winning coalitions here. Do you see one? I don't either. Yeah, but do sanity check. Are there other winning coalitions? I think we're good. I think that's about it. So these are the only winning coalitions. This is everybody, and everybody is called the Grand Coalition. And that's always going to be a winning coalition unless you've really screwed up your system, which we'll take a look at in a minute. The Grand Coalition. All right, let's take a look at something else. What if what if they got together and they decided, this voting system kind of sucks because we don't have any power, really. And the thing today we're going to talk about is how to measure that power. How could they go to a court and illustrate to the court they have no power? Right now it just feels that way. So they negotiate and they say, what about this system? How does this system work? When I say how, that's pretty general, but do you see any troubles maybe here? Yes, Braden.
Is there too many coalitions?
There's definitely a lot of coalitions. What are you thinking when you say that? That's
There's too many possibilities of winning.
You're pretty close to what it is. So let's see if maybe we're on the same page here. So what if these two partners vote yes on something and get 10, but these two vote no? So the problem here is we can have ties in our coalitions. This is a bad system. And let's write out why. Bad system because we could have opposing coalitions that tie. So we could have A2, player 1 and player 4, and player 2 and player 3. They say yes, and they say no, and there is a collision right there. Can't settle it. So this is a terrible system. We don't want to allow for ties. Let's take a look at another one. What about? Then they realize that. Okay, that was a dumb plan. Blah, 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 blah. Let's get rid of that. What about this one here? What about that system? Did you have a thought, Abigail?
No.
Okay. You looked like you might have. What's up with this system? Any just observations? Imagine just casting a vote. Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't everyone have to be together for it to win?
Is that what you're gonna say, Christina? Yeah, absolutely. Check this one out. It basically is said it didn't really matter how much stock you bought at the beginning. Your vote's as good as my vote because everyone has to vote here. So the only winning coalition is the Grand Coalition. Is everyone. So it might as well be it's a lot like this. Kind of like everybody's vote is about the same. There's no distinction in power. which makes you wonder why somebody paid 80K to have as much power as somebody with 20K. I'd be pretty pissed. That would not be a good investment in my money. So, let's see, do I have another one here? Yes, I do. What about this one? What do you think about that? Yeah, Braden, what do you think? Say that again, sir? Not enough votes, yeah. Nothing could pass. The quota is more than the total possible votes. So here, there are no winning coalitions because the Q is bigger than the total of the votes. You could never match it. So this is another poorly concocted system. So even though we've got just some numbers up here and it seems arbitrary, there's lots of things happening below the surface. So let's come up with a rule for quotas. Our quota should always be less than or equal to the total number of votes. And if we were shooting for fairness and keeping some kind of fairness criteria, what could we say Q should be bigger than? What do we think here? What would be a good lower bound to ensure some fairness in this? Just think of the fairness criteria. And we already kind of talked about it. Might be a good one to add to the United States. Just to have a majority of these things. So to have a simple majority down here. So this should be greater than half the total votes to ensure a majority. And then we don't have to worry about violating any fairness clauses or anything like that. All right, let's take a look at some other systems. I just want to explore some of these and show you some of the weird stuff that could happen. So here's a new system. Ten, 11, 3, 2. So this one's only got 3 players. And we've got those votes. Anything hit you about that system? Christine, I know you came in a little bit late. Is this all like making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yes, ma'am.
So player 1 can win on his own.
Yeah. Player 1 doesn't really need anybody else. These two are pretty much useless. They certainly can't pass anything on their own. So player 1 decides everything. Player 1 is what's called a dictator. So this is what it means to be a dictator. You have power, no one else does. So P1 is a dictator. Only P1 can decide the vote. Hold back their votes or they give their votes. Either way, they're making all the calls there. What about this? So same setup with the, oh no, this is a little different, sorry. I thought I like to tweak things slowly and watch them morph. This one I tweaked a little bit more. New system. And right now we're just practicing looking at these things and gaining some insight, understanding how to read them. So let's take a look. Is player 1 a dictator? No, why? So yeah, Braden, how come?
Because he can't win by himself.
Yeah. No one here can win by themselves. They have to form a coalition to win. So player one's not a dictator here, but player one does have an interesting role. Player one can make sure nothing passes. So check this out. Player one has veto power. Because if player one withholds their vote, good Lord, their vote, let's start over here, nothing can pass. So that's a very different kind of power, right? You can't just enforce everything you want, but you can sure stop things from happening. And let's see, I know there's one other thing. Okay, yep. One last system before we start talking about, well, I got one more example. One more terminology. Who are the important players here? Good, Brady, go for it. You seem on this, man.
1 and 2.
Yeah. So explain. Say a little more. You're absolutely right.
Well, 1 and 2 need to work together in order to pass something, but player number 3 can't do anything.
Beautiful. Yeah, nice. Check this out. Player 1 and 2 can pass stuff if they agree. If these two work in a coalition, they can agree. Player 2 can't really help anyone. No one's going to player 2 and begging them to be in their coalition. They don't really care. Because player 2 can't do anything for them. And this is politics, and all that matters is what can you do for me. So the only way player two just never matters. Player 2 is what's called a dummy, which is terrible. Or player 3, excuse me. Player 3 is a dummy. It's just, this is lingo. I didn't make it up. It's kind of a stupid word. It's a weird it's like an old person word. Right? Player 3 is a dummy because their vote can't change anything. And let's just make the note that Braden said it first. Player 1 and player 2 have the power as a coalition. No one's a dictator, but man, those two own the place. All right, let me give you one. So now I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you a system, and I just want you to take a minute and determine if there's any dictators, if anybody has veto power, and if there's any dummies. So here's the system. Do a little thinking. 16 is the quota. 7, 6, 3, 3, 2. So just take a minute, think this through. Dictators. And I'm going to run to the restroom. This is my throw things in front. This is throwing the barrel in front of you and trying to get away. Dictators, veto power, dummies. Be right back. Fake quiz. No karma quiz. got like a weighted voting mind. You're like, yeah, you see it. That's awesome. Low-hanging fruit. I think Braden's got all these answers, so I'm going to ask other folks. James, are there any dictators here? No. And why is that?
Because no one could, I guess, dictate.
That's true. Yes, definitely. There is no one who can dictate because no one has the quota or more themselves. Yeah. So no dictators because no one, and I'll write some reasons here, no one has 16 or more votes to themselves. Veto power? Does anyone have veto power? Now this, I haven't even thought about this. I was trying to think about it when I went to the bathroom, but then I just went to the bathroom. I didn't think about it. So, any ideas here? James, yeah.
Could it be 6?
So what's your reasoning for that?
Well, because 7 and 6, that 7, 6, and 3, that's like a winning coalition.
Yeah.
And without 6, you can't get to 16.
Definitely. I think you're right, because let's say 6 withholds their vote. Even if the rest of these people group up, they can't pass anything. You see that? So if 6 says no, but everybody else says yes, it's not going to pass. Is that right? Yeah, because that's only 15 votes total. So 6 says, our player 2 has veto power. Brayden, you're making a furrowed brow. Is that?
Oh, no, I think it can pass because 7 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2 is 18.
It's what?
18. Oh, no, 15. Oh.
That's it. All right, man. I was like, he's not buying this shit.
No.
Yeah, but now you do.
Yeah, I said it.
Yeah, Paul, yes, sir.
Couldn't 7 also be a veto power?
I think you're right, yeah. I think if 7 holds out, then what do we got here? Yeah, because that's even less, right? That's 1 less. So P1, P2. Let's see. If like one of these 3s held out, could a thing still pass? Absolutely, right? And so the way to check for veto power is remove that player and see if everybody else voted, could they pass it without that person? And so these 3 have no veto power. In fact, these 3 are dummies. They can't change any vote. No vote can be canceled because these guys withhold their stuff. So the dummies are players 3, 4, and 5. Alrighty, friends. Any questions on that? Because I want to do our stuff for today. I printed these on my wife's printer. They're so sweet. She has such a nice printer. You're welcome. So we actually want the side that says Banzaf. Oh wait. Oh no, we're not here yet. We're not here yet. But here they go anyway. We're not here yet. But here's a sheet anyway. You're welcome. We'll get to this in a second. I want to talk about what's on this sheet. Well, which is a way to measure power in a weighted voting system. So let's see, what year was it? Got a little story about Banzaf here. It's got like facts about life, which I have trouble remembering. I'll tell you this story. So in 1965, we'll come back to this example after we're done. John Banzaf, who was a mathematician, political scientist, published a paper that said weighted voting doesn't work. And he based this paper off research he did when he was called to testify in a trial. And the trial was some people were suing the Board of Supervisors of Nassau County, New York, claiming they had violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which basically, one of the things in there says you have a right to vote and have your vote matter. So that's the Equal Protection Clause. So someone was suing this board, someone who didn't have any power on the board, and said, hey, this doesn't seem right. I feel like we can never pass anything. I feel like my vote doesn't matter. And until Banzhaf did this work, no one had a way to prove it. So he did what we're about to do to prove to the court that, yeah, this voting system is screwed and that most of the people in it have zero power. So let's talk about how to do this. What is Banzhaf's power index? So to measure, we're going to talk about two ways. This is the way for today. To measure, bless you, political power in a voting system. Right? This kind of analysis is what's going on with all the redistricting that's happening, right? So there's a lot of, is everybody aware of this? Like there's new districts being drawn all over the place. There's a lot of, currently it's Republicans doing it, but whoever's in charge always does it. They redraw where the votes come from to get more weight from those regions, and they try to skew it so that it favors them. So there was actually just a thing before the Supreme Court last week. The Supreme Court sided with the Republican government that was trying to do this redistricting. Well, they didn't side against them, which is about the same. So we can use the Banzhaf. That's a funny name. That's an interesting name. I don't quite know. It's not funny. It's just interesting. Power index. And I've got a step-by-step procedure here. So let me just give you the step-by-step procedure plan. Number one, make a list of all winning coalitions. This is the beast of this is the really hard part. If you have more than 3 or 4, this can be pretty intense. We'll actually talk about how big that is on Wednesday, but this can be a burden. So this is a burden if there are too many players. And we would probably want to automate this with a computer. For sure, we're not going to do that. Make a list of all winning coalitions. Step 2, in each coalition, determine the critical players. I'm going to say determine and underline. For us, we'll be underlining them. The critical players. Now, a critical player, so a critical player is someone who, if you remove their vote from the coalition, the winning coalition, it changes to a losing coalition. So a critical players is any player who changes a winning coalition to a losing coalition if we remove their votes. Almost like veto power, but it's veto power in a coalition, not the whole grand coalition. Bless you. Okay, we're almost done. This is all the hard work. Now it's just doing some counting. So step 3 is count the number of times each player is critical. And then, so let's call that BK, B sub K equals the number of times player K is critical. Step 4, add that total up. So T is equal to B1 plus B2 up to B sub K, the total number of critical players in all the scenarios. So if that doesn't make sense, let me put some words here. This is the total number of underlines, essentially. And then step 5, we're done here. For each player, find just a fraction. And that fraction is B sub K over T. And then you get this distribution. And so this is actually the bands-off power index for player K. And then we have one last thing to say. If we look at all of them, if we make a little list, B1, B1 over T, B2 over T, all these fractions, this is called the bands-off power distribution up to the nth player. And it gives us a sense of how power is distributed among everybody. All right, now we just got to do this. That's the plan. Let's do it together. And then let's do it apart. So example. I know you're still writing that down. I'll slow down in just a second. All right, so step 1, let's all do this together. What are all the winning coalitions? And I would recommend writing them like just by their votes, right? So use 3, 2, and 1 to represent each of the players. So what are the list of all winning coalitions? Step 1. Keep it in mind, gotta keep the quota in mind, of course. I don't know if I'm missing any. Let's look. We agreeing? Yeah. Let's just make sure we're all on the same page with that. I don't think there are any others. I got the official okay from Braden in the back, so I'm feeling good about that. Does this make sense? That that's the only winning coalitions, and if not, let's talk. Bella, does that make sense to you? Okay, cool. I'm just trying to read your eyes, I can't quite. Okay. All right, So now, underline the critical player in each. Let's do this together because we haven't done this before. So in this one, if 2 is removed from the coalition, it moves under the quota. So 2 is critical. This is step 2 now as well. 3 is critical. Here, both of these are critical players. Either one drops you below 4 if they leave the coalition. What about here? Is 3 critical? Yeah, 3 is definitely critical. Is 2 critical? No. And 1 is certainly not critical, right? So now we've got all the critical players done, and that's really, we've done all the hard work. Now we go through and we crank out these Bs. So B1, this is player 1, player 2, player 3. So B1 is 1, 2, 3. Player 1 was critical 3 times. Stephanie, you good on that too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And then B2, player 2 is only critical one time. B3, player 3 is only critical 1 time. So now I can just whip out the power index. T in step 4 is the total of all these. So T equals 5. And now here's the power index. So the Banzhaf power distribution is as follows. It's going to be 3/5, 1/5, 1/5. And now we have a sense, even though these two have different vote weights, we see that they have equivalent power. They have 1/5 of the power each. Player 1 holds most of the power. Now we've analyzed that system. So we could, whatever we want to do with that information at this point, make decisions whether we are happy with this voting system or if it's unfair in any particular way. So my friends, let's do this together now. Banzhaf power distributions 1 on the front side of that sheet. Let's take some time, and I'm going to give you some time. Let's work through both those questions. 1, 2, 3, there's 4 things to do there. And let's touch base in a minute. I'm going to do them with you. There's even some hints there, right, on the number of coalitions and everything, so gradually getting Part C, when you get there, you might want to, there's a note like 8, there's 2 different 8s. They represent different people, so you might want to put like a little mark by 1 just to distinguish it. That's why it says, think of it as 8A and 8B when you're writing out your coalitions.
okay.
Five critical or is three also critical?
Yeah, because if 3 withheld their vote, they would fall under the 8, so you're absolutely right, they're both critical, yes ma'am.
I'm just setting up the fact that my clothes
We're good? You need help?
Yeah, so I'm supposed to be like,
So first list all the winning coalitions, that's step 1. Does that make sense to you? What I mean by that?
not really.
What combinations of votes are 8 or 6 or more, right? So for this, oh, you're doing the wrong sheet now. This guy here, we're doing this side. Same thing though. So what combinations of these 3 votes give me 8 or more? So like what? What are some combos?
5.
Yeah, so you make like a little, so you say 5, 3, 1. What else? Just out of the 5, 3, 1. Ooh, what do you mean by that? Oh, no, so that would be the same, because these are just groups of people, right? So doesn't matter who's listed first here. So what else? 5, 1, does that work? No? And then, so the only other coalition is everybody. Grand coalition. Now you go through and underline, and you look and say, if I pull this person's vote out, do they go under the quota? Okay, so if I remove this has 8 votes, quota's 8. If I pull out 3, they only have 5 votes. So player 3 is critical to that coalition. What about 5? If 5 drops out of the coalition,
He's critical as well.
he's critical as well, exactly.
So these are both critical.
There you go.
This one is not.
Correct.
Is there a thing for that, or is this not?
So you let's put a little mark, and then you're good to go. Yeah, so then, follow that algorithm up there. That's what we're doing next, then it's the bands up thing. So you've got the hard work done. Now you count how many times, how many marks you got, and then the proportion that each person has of those marks. Yes, ma'am?
For, I guess if I call it one,
Yeah.
third would be, I guess like determine what critical players in this game.
Well, let's see, so the quota's 8, right? So if you lose those 3 votes, how many votes are there?
Like these 3?
Yeah, so if you lost, if this player here, player 2, dropped out of that coalition, you'd only have 5 and 1, 6 votes, so 3 is critical.
Oh, in this situation.
Yeah, what about 1?
No.
So 1, yeah, 1 doesn't matter, 1 could drop out, they still have the 8 votes they need.
Okay.
That make sense?
Yeah.
That's
so-
critical.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we next?
Oh, I was just gonna say,
Oh.
change.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah,
Lovely. Just kind of how I just have to leave it?
Yep, yep. Quite nice, and yeah, and I think there are 4, so this should be out of 4, because there's 4.
Oh, yeah, there's one now. Thank
Right.
you.
Yes, yes, and that's where the 4th one, yeah, exactly, yep, is a dictator, possibly. Yes, sir. Yeah, so, but where's the 1 mark? See, I don't see any underlines for player 3.
Okay, so I don't need
That's-
to include that?
Yeah, so it's 0.
Okay.
And then it's gonna be 2/4. So these should actually add up to 1. That's a good way to check.
Okay, yeah, no, no.
So it should be 0/4. Player 3 has no power whatsoever. Are you doing well?
Yes, yes.
You rocking this?
I'm having trouble with the equation part, I'm kind of confused, I don't
The
understand.
T.
So, yeah, let's do this one together. We'll do this one together. And I'll go, yeah.
I'm confused with with step,
Oh.
this one.
Okay, and I think that's the same thing Frank's having trouble. So you go through, so like look up on that example on the board there.
Yeah. You took,
So I looked for the total number of critical players.
so this one's 2.
So this one's 4, because we count how many times they're critical as well.
Oh,
So-
right.
So basically, the number of underlines total in your whole process, that's T. Does that make sense, Frank?
Total underline.
So T is the total number of critical players that I've counted. So in that example up there, for me, it's underlines. So that one's 5. I've got 5 critical players, so that's T.
So here you have 4 critical players?
Yes, exactly,
And
1,
so
there's
then-
4. And then the number that goes on top, so that's the bottom of the fraction. See down there where it was 5?
Yes.
And then the number on top is how many times that particular player is underlined. So that first slot represents player 1, which is 3 votes, and they're critical 3 times. So I put a 3 on top. Notice that player 2, which has 2 votes, does this make sense? Yeah? Each of the player 2 and player 3 are only critical in one time each, so they get a 1 on top.
But they're the same number, so shouldn't they just go in the same collective? Couldn't it just be 2 over 5 instead of?
Well, we don't want to diminish them and pretend they're 1. So in
Right.
some sense, well, I mean, if you were them, would you want to just be lumped in with everybody else? You know.
So for this one, for number 2,
Yeah.
just for clarity's sake.
Yeah.
So you would have to find all of your winning coalitions.
That's step 1, yes ma'am.
And so coalition is in the addition of everything, it's greater than 6, so this would be.
It's greater than 12 here.
Oh, greater than 12.
So
but
yeah,
that's
look at your
above
quota, look at your quota for the system. And so like 1 and 2 can't do it alone.
No.
But if they add 3 in, then they're good. So 1, 2, 3, that's a winning coalition. Or 7, 4, 3, I mean. Does that make sense?
7, 4, 3 is one continuous winning
Yes,
coalition.
ma'am, yeah.
And so it's everything that can be added to equal 12 greater than.
Yeah, exactly. That is close, but we still have to count for every player. So player 3, who has 1 vote, doesn't have any underlines, so they have no power. We want to make sure there's a slot for everybody, so we can represent their power in the system. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Is
Yeah.
this the only one that exists here? Because if you took 4, 3, and 2, that would still not equal 12.
That's right.
So would this be easy?
Yeah, so could you do 7? Let's see, wait, it says there's 4,
You could do
right?
7, 3, 2.
That's right, so there's another one. Yep.
And then you could do 7 and 2 wouldn't do it. So is that everything?
So
7,
there should be
3,
4. So there's the whole coalition as well. So 7, 4, 3, 2.
Yeah.
And then what is the other one? Oh, no, you got it. 7, 3, 2.
So would that be it?
No, there's one more. I've even done this and I can't remember what it was. Has anybody got number 2 done?
I haven't done that, I don't know what's right.
Yeah, what did you get for coalition? So we've got 7, 4, 3.
7, 3, 2.
7, 3, 2, and then the Grand Coalition, and which one are we missing here?
What's 7? Oh, I'm on, you're on this.
Oh, you're doing okay. We're doing the pens.
Oh, that would
That's okay,
explain.
that's okay, sorry, everybody, yeah. I was like, yeah, let's do this.
That would
There you go, but now
explain it.
you still know how to do it. Oh, nice. Yeah, you did. So for this one, for the distributions, don't forget to list everybody. So this is player 1, player 2, but then,
Also listed zero.
yeah, so because we want to represent them, but represent that they have no power, you know?
Be straight up on.
Paul, you doing good, friend?
Yeah, I'm a little confused on, it's like which ones make you absolutely need. Cause you could say, like,
So definitely, so the Grand Coalition, yeah, I've got that. You could do 8-1 2 different ways. Or,
that's supposed to be
oh yeah, so 8,
But
8,
you would
8,
need
yep,
both of
you would
those.
need both of those. So yeah, this is perfect.
okay.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I think 1 is critical there in this first coalition because if 1 drops out, there's still 16 votes, right? So 1 isn't critical in that coalition there, but both the 8s are. Oh no, actually neither of the 8s are. right? So if one of the eights drops out, you still have 9 votes.
Oh, yeah.
So
for the-
nobody's critical in that
Okay.
first coalition. Yeah.
Thank you.
How's it going?
So a question.
Yes.
So it's just singularly six of the state.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then my second one is how do I kind of determine the critical players for the next one?
Oh, okay, so you come down and you say, all right, how many votes do they have total? 9. If one of them drops out, do they fall below the quota? So like here, either one of those is critical here. Because, and then here too, because then they drop to 8 if one drops out. But in this one, you've got 17 votes, right?
Yeah.
If one of the 8s drops out, how many votes do you have? So not critical. This one's not critical. And if one drops out, you're still there, so none of those players are critical.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. James, how's it going, friend?
Good.
Making sense?
Yeah.
Looking good. So this one sounds a little weird, this first one here. So let's see, so your coalition's 5-3, love it, 5-3-1, perfect. Let's see. This is what's confusing. Oh, okay. Let's take a look at, so you just missed one of the criticals, right? 3 is also critical in that guy. There you go. So that was it. Otherwise, you got the right idea. Let me get some answers up here on the board. We can call it a day. Okay, so AA. Anybody else get 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 on C? Yeah? Awesome. So let's check this out. I think this is pretty awesome and interesting, actually, particularly this one here. The power is completely balanced, right? Everybody has the equivalent amount of power, even though it looks really grossly outweighed. Like the person with the 1 vote, you would think, I have no power. You have exactly as much power as the other players here. You've got an evenly distributed distribution. Here, this is what a dictatorship looks like. All the power is focused on one person, and then this is sad. This is what a dummy looks like, really, 0. So, hold on to those. I'll collect them on Wednesday. I still got to get some other stuff back to you. But, See you Wednesday. If the snow, keep an eye on your emails. I don't know what the weather's gonna be like. If it's bad, we'll go online. Okay, we'll be on Zoom. Okay, thank you. Gotcha. Please bring those sheets back with you. All of you, and you will. Don't do it.
No, you're fine. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.